back, everyone. Next, we have Regen BioPharma Inc. It trades on the OTC Pink sheets under the symbol RGBP. It's a biotech company focused on developing innovative treatments using autologous cell therapies, RNA and DNA-based immunotherapy, and small molecules in the immune-oncology and autoimmune disease space. Please welcome President CEO David Koos and Harry Lander, Senior Scientific Consultant. Nice to see you, gentlemen.
Well, thank you for having us. Excited to be back and an opportunity to spend a little more time covering some of the questions that people had that we couldn't get to last time.
Well, great. You've got time. The floor is yours. And just call me back when you're ready for those questions.
Perfect. All right. So to start out with, I wanted to cover where we sit as a company, where I see things going. I think there's a lot of questions out there on social media about direction things are taking and the like. I think the first thing I want to say is that we've had a few comments that we've made via Twitter, I guess now X, regarding our Heme-Accelerate therapy and where we're going with that. It is a therapy that we filed an IND with, cleared the IND. It's been a little bit of time back. But recently, there's been developments that we think are very timely for Heme-Accelerate. Heme-Accelerate initially focused on aplastic anemia, but as researchers are finding out, doctors are finding out, that such a treatment potentially could be useful for chemotherapy patients. Because chemotherapy patients have issues relating to bone density, bone deterioration, things of that nature. So that if you could treat them, it would make it a less deleterious process of getting chemotherapy in some regards. Is that a safe statement to make, Harry?
Yeah, I think maybe we have a few more minutes. I could add to that if that's all right.
Yeah, please.
So right, so all chemotherapy suppresses the bone marrow where your lymphoid cells are made. But in many cases, you bounce back after stopping chemotherapy. But in some cases, and in many cases, you don't. And in fact, about approximately half the cases of people who get chemotherapy, for example, in breast cancer, they can't even take the minimum effective dose of chemotherapy because of suppression, of very severe suppression of their bone marrow. So there are many cases where drugs used to protect the bone marrow would be very, very helpful. And that's sort of what our Heme-Accelerate, after we finish the aplastic anemia phase 1 trial, that's a great indication to go after because chemotherapy is very common and there's a great need for protecting the bone marrow.
In keeping with that, I noticed there's typically about 1 million cases of patients taking chemotherapy each year in the U.S. and 10 million cases worldwide. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
And I guess the average cost per patient is somewhere close to $18,000 per patient. So that means that in the U.S. alone, you've got something like $18 billion a year spent on chemotherapy. And you would have another, $180 billion worldwide total. Now, that being said, we think that a treatment for the side effects of chemotherapy, namely the issues pertaining to bone marrow loss, could be treated far more economically than any other alternative on the market. Is that a safe assumption to make?
Yeah, there really aren't any good treatments for neutropenia for protecting the bone marrow. Yeah.
So we think we could treat the cost for treating patients when the drug is approved would be approximately what?
Oh, I don't know. It's hard to say what the cost of manufacturing will be, but you would think, it all depends on what the insurance companies will be willing to pay. So that's a deep discussion. But these types of drugs are not cheap. They're typically, I don't know, $1,000 more plus or minus, who knows, but in that range.
Okay, so even at the small end of the scale, if you have $1,000 times 1 million patients in the U.S., that's a big number. And then even more so worldwide. You're getting into something that's like 1 billion domestically on the low end, and about 10 billion on the international level or the worldwide level, which makes this a viable direction to move in. Is that a safe assumption?
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of assumptions there. We don't know what the pricing will be, but sure, it would be a big market. If we could protect the bone marrow in chemotherapy patients, it would be a very substantial market globally as well as in the U.S.
Okay. So for right now, our focus is to get into phase 1 because we believe that in getting into phase 1, showing that it's a safe drug, and showing that there's a certain amount of efficacy that we provide in phase 1, it's extremely plausible that a much larger pharma company would have an interest in some sort of relationship with us. Would that be a fair assumption?
I think so.
Yeah. So in that situation, I think you've got a drug that is ready to go into the clinic. We moved from a preclinical company to a clinical company, and we've got something that is viable to attract attention from larger biotechs and pharmaceutical companies that could provide much needed capital to get into phase 2 and phase 3. So that puts us in a point that I think you see that we go from a nascent company to a company that's showing true direction and true growth. The reason the push right now is for Heme Accelerate is that it does have a cleared IND. And the other therapies we have are not at that level yet, which doesn't mean that they're not good therapies. It means that there's going to need to be more time and a lot more money spent at that. So our focus near term is going to be to get Heme Accelerate into phase 1. And I think that's a fairly safe argument to be made for the direction that we're going. Now, I know we've had, not to completely go off course, but we've had a lot of people who have been confused by the Series A preferred stock dividend that was issued out recently and why I did that. Well, the reason that we issued that dividend was really there wasn't very much stock out there available, period, after the reverse. The reverse, in hindsight, I would own this. It was a mistake to do that dramatic of a reverse, and I own that. My best my best guess at the time was we had way too many shares out in the system of both the common and preferred, and I was trying to shore things up for the shareholders. Well, it didn't necessarily work out the way I had envisioned it. We ended up with a lot of shareholders with stock and Series A preferred that no market really developed for it because there just wasn't liquidity. With the dividend distribution, everybody had received shares in the Series A preferred, so that one group wasn't benefiting preferentially over another. It also gave it enough liquidity that it can start trading and trading meaningfully. So there's no, I guess there's no underhanded, mysterious reason for issuing the Series A preferred. It was really done to help the Series A preferred create a market. And that being said, I think we've had a lot of people that have sold a lot of their stock, and that stock is in the hands of the public. We don't have any of it. It's not part of our equity line. So all this selling that's been going on out there, people just getting edgy and wanting to get out, I believe, of their preferred stock just because, which is kind of unfortunate, but I have no control over who's buying and who's selling. I think that in the long run, I like the idea that there's something somewhere around 10 million shares of Series A preferred stock out there now. And in the long run, that's probably a good size for the market for Series A preferred stock. Let's see. So I know we had some questions that we didn't get to last time, and I've been receiving emails on those. One question had to do with me discussing potential financing options out there for the company in the future. That's kind of a complex question, because what happened to some of our financing avenues is with our previous auditor having been banned from practicing before the SEC, which it wasn't just us, it impacted something like well over 300 public companies. What that means is that when it comes time for us to file our financials for the annual 10K with the SEC, we have to go back and re-audit some of the financials for Regen that was done by our previous auditor, because we can't rely on those financials according to the SEC's letter that we received. It's unfortunate, but that does take time, and it takes me writing a check for something we've already paid for, in my view. But I can appreciate the fact that the government wants to make sure that all of our financials are transparent and accurate. So we're moving in that direction. That's in process. We're getting that done. The last NQ that was filed, the auditor involved with that was Bush and Associates, which is our new auditor. So we've already kicked the tires. We've already got things up and running, and they're working on the audits we'll need for our 10K coming up. We close out our fiscal year at the end of September. Let's see. Okay, so we have another question that I received about grant funding opportunities. At this point, we're looking at grants. We're not necessarily finding what is currently directed specifically at something like Accelerate. But we do continue to look for it, and when it's appropriate, we will apply for grants. Now, I know as a shareholder, people are looking for things that will cause excitement in the market, price to go up in the stock, all those sorts of things. I can't control the market itself. I am sensitive to the idea that the shareholders would like to see the stock go up as opposed to down. When you look at what we're doing right now, I think there's many things that potentially can come together to find ourselves in a position that we have legitimate news to report to the public. As those things come up, they'll be reported. The timing of those things, I have no way to tell you because it's science. I think that's a favorite of Harry's. It's science. You don't have a time horizon that you can specifically point to. I will tell you this. Right now, as far as Accelerate goes, we are out getting bids from various contract research organizations, and they're really all over the map in terms of how much they would like. I don't know, Harry. On the low end, what do you think? What do you think we're looking at for series phase 1 of it?
I think the final range will be between $500,000 and $1 million. I think that's probably where the range will be for the phase 1 trial.
And the $1 million end would be the larger contract research organizations.
Yeah, exactly. So we're discussing bids with both smaller CROs and mid-sized CROs, and we've had really excellent discussions with certainly a couple of the smaller ones who are clearly very competent, but they're not these 2,000 employee organizations, and that's a mid-sized CRO. And we've had some, in my opinion, disastrous discussions with mid-sized CROs who are clearly the wrong fit. I mean, they're just not interested in. I don't even know why they responded to our request to discuss it, because in one case we were talking to a CRO. There were two fellows on the line. One guy was working on his emails while he was on the call with us. So obviously we were not continuing
discussion.
Not really
dialed in.
Yeah, dialed in with their own stuff, but not with us. So I think the smaller CROs are very competent and they're very responsive. So I've been very pleased with those discussions.
They seem to be more sensitive to our company's needs as opposed to a larger one that would say that compared to doing stuff for Merck, we're like a dot on the map.
Yeah, exactly. And there are plenty of CROs that deal with the many companies that are Regen's size and market cap and in that range. So so they're very happy to work with companies like ours.
Okay. So let's see. I believe we've got some time, but I'm wanting to give an opportunity to the public to ask questions that we can address and not get caught up in a tight squeeze. So Anna, why don't we go ahead and start taking some questions?
Okay, sounds good. So Greg says, since the February conference, you told us you couldn't talk about potential financing or partnership because of a material event. Are we closer to a deal? What's going on?
Well, right now, one of the holdbacks or holdups in finalizing any sort of a transaction is getting all of our financials re-audited by the new auditor, because of what I had mentioned earlier. The old auditor, when they tell an auditor he can no longer practice before the SEC, and it's a lifetime ban, that means that any work that he's done for you in the past can't be relied upon to be incorporated in any other financials going forward. So that's why it's very important for us to get our audits completed as quickly as possible, so that then we're opening up avenues that we don't currently have available to us.
And how much financing will the company need initially for the Hema Accelerate trials?
Well, we're kind of leaning, I think Gary and I both believe that we're leaning more towards about the $500,000 range. That's a safe number.
And will you be applying for a grant in September?
Yeah, we'll be, well, let me back up. We're looking at grants to apply for, but just because there's a window there doesn't mean there's a fit. So as we find grants that are available that make sense to us, we certainly would apply for it. You don't just do a shotgun approach. It's not answer a few questions online. When you apply for a grant, you've got to have all the infrastructure ready to go. You've got to have the personnel that you're plugging into the grant application. That they all have to have legitimate backgrounds, so the people that are reviewing the application can say, well, this is a legitimate deal. We know these people, that people, these, across the board, they're looking at the credentials.
And is Annette Marlowe still on board?
Annette has moved on to another company.
And did the company issue a 2-for-1 preferred share dividend to shareholders to offset substantial dilution expected?
No. No, as I said, it was really a function of, I would like to see for the shareholders a more liquid market, so they didn't feel like they have stock in a company that doesn't trade.
Clifford says, did you notice recently the FDA announced they're launching a new rare disease innovation hub, which will help to expedite the processing and approval times for rare diseases? So could this help Regen in the plans for starting your Hema Accelerate phase 1 and 2 trials?
I think that's more of a Gary question.
Right. So the indication on our phase 1 trial is aplastic anemia, which is absolutely a rare disease. And so, yeah, we're looking at that, but we don't want to go all the way through and just have a rare disease indication approved. That's it's not a real path to success for the company. A real path to success is what we were talking about earlier. So in our discussions with some of the CROs, for example, we talked about adding on indications after our phase 1 trial, for example, as we discussed for the chemotherapy-induced myelosuppression. So, and that's very doable, and then you open up very large markets. So although the FDA is, and we're not alone, and that's why the FDA is doing this, because in many cases, the expense it takes to create a drug for a rare disease yields a drug that has to be extraordinarily expensive to pay back all of the investments that were done to bring it to market. So they try to give some benefits, some incentives to work on those indications.
Thank you for that. Question from James saying, you mentioned at a previous conference a set goal of uplisting to NASDAQ sooner rather than later. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, I think the problem we have there is that since we're looking into that, the price has come down dramatically. So we don't qualify based on price, and B, we don't qualify based on we don't have the re-audits done of our financials, which we're working on, and those would be required in order to be able to do an uplift. So if the price were up high, that's great. But the flip side of the coin is that if your auditor, previous auditor, is not able to provide audits to the SEC, and the ones that he has provided you can't include in new filings, you have to have the new auditor redo those financials so that they can be used. So that to me is probably not, it's important, but it's not the number one thing on my mind right now. Getting the audits done are very important because that opens up a lot of different directions you can go.
Bunny asks, when will the audits be completed? Do you have a timeline?
You know, the one thing I've found about auditors, they're not real great communicators. They don't always answer the phone when you call them, or they don't give you firm timelines that you can rely on. I don't. It's kind of in a joking fashion. It's just every auditor I've ever been associated with is the same way. They're very difficult to get a hold of on the phone, and very difficult to pin down on dates that they'll be done. And in a way, rightfully so, because they don't really know until they roll up their sleeves and get in there and see that everything is much simpler or more complex than they thought originally. So it is what it is.
Okay. Kristen asks if you have an update regarding funding from any institutional investors that emailed you, as you mentioned previously.
Yeah, that still goes back to the audits that have come in, because the problem you have is that when an institution reaches out and says they're interested in financing you, they want to know that you are fully reporting and that you're going to stay fully reporting. And to do that, to stay fully reporting, we have to have these re-audits completed.
Greg asks, sorry, 1 second. What type of financing are you planning to raise? The $500K? Will there be dilution with the stock?
Well, that we don't know yet. I don't want to be so vague. On the one hand, there may be actually further dilution in the stock price, but if you get through phase one, there should be, in my belief, added value to the company, which would more than mitigate any dilution. So if you have a Chevrolet right now, and it's great, and magically you can wave a wand and you have a Rolls Royce. Well, okay, so the Rolls Royce is worth more, the Chevrolet is worth less. So in our case, and maybe I don't want to say we're Chevrolet or Rolls Royce, but we're in a place where if you have a product that you're closer to attracting big pharma, large biotechs, you're no longer in a place of, we don't have anything yet, but this is what we want to do. Once you're in phase one, you're actually demonstrating that you're moving forward in what you are and what you're going to be, as opposed to what you want to be.
Well, we are out of time with the presentation, but I want to give you as much time as you need just to give some closing remarks. We've got a few more questions, but we'll send them to you so you can answer them on your own.
Okay, appreciate that. I'm glad that we had an opportunity to talk today, because I know that it's been a while since we've had time to really get into the questions, time to paint the picture of where we are and where we're going, and clarify some communication on what we're all about. I'm not interested in hyping the company. What I am interested in is being as forthcoming and transparent as I could be. So with that, I really appreciate the opportunity to use the venue here to reach our shareholders, and look forward to our next presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. Thank you, Harry. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you
Thank
again
you so
soon.
much.
All right. We'll be right back.
Bye.